Can you record
So
also?
tonight, Philip and Barry are going to be leading the class on this terrific chapter. So Philip or Barry, whoever's first, take it away.
Okay, I think that's me. So welcome. We're up to chapter 41 in volume 1 of the Profound Treasury, The Ocean of Dharma. Mindfulness of effort. And to begin with, effort's an interesting term. I mean, the notion of effort can seem counter to so much of what we hear in meditation instruction and teachings, which is all about relaxing, about it being effortless. That can I shut this thing up? Hold on. Sorry about that. Got a noisy printer there. So, yeah, we're supposed to let go of any need for accomplishment or actually doing anything. So, and he says that although it might seem contradictory to develop effort and well being at the same time, the effort of the third foundation of mindfulness is extraordinary. And extraordinary because it is not the effort we usually think of. The effort, as I was just referring to, of talking, working hard, striving for self improvement. He speaks of the conflict we may experience between our instinct and what he refers to as ethics. So, instinct here is just the instinct to do what feels good. That there can be an instinct that runs counter to practice. You know that you should meditate, but you just don't feel like it. It goes against your instinct. So it takes real effort to do the right thing. And that's a drag. And it's not the effort we're speaking of here. But there is another kind of instinct that he refers to as natural instinct, as opposed to casual instinct. And then he goes on to say that, however, it is not so simple to realize that natural instinct, that we prefer the casual instinct of viewing it as a gift, of going along with it haphazardly, with indulgence. And by instinct, he says, we mean the instinct of self-consciousness, almost an unconditional self-consciousness. This is the instinct we're speaking of here, related to the effort we're speaking of here. That instinct of self-consciousness is what wakes us up. That no matter how lost in thought and dreams we may be, before long, there'll be a flash of awareness. It's like we're checking in with reality. And this happens all the time. Without it, without this instinct, we couldn't survive. We'd be walking into walls and driving off the road. So this is just something that happens naturally. Usually, it goes by very quickly and without us really taking any notice of it. So this is the first flash that he refers to here. That moment when we check in with reality, the moment when you become aware that you're lost in thought. And he describes the flash as almost unconditionally self-conscious, almost unconditional self-consciousness, almost unconditional. See, unconditional self-consciousness would be awareness without any reference. There'll be more on this later. So this is the kind of consciousness, the kind of awareness where we're thinking, and then something happens. I'm thinking. So in that moment, there is duality. We see that I am thinking. And so this is the almost unconditioned. So self-consciousness is dualistic. I mean, hey, it's right there, self-consciousness. And although we are concentrating here on meditation practice, this happens in life in general, so-called post-meditation. This goes on all the time. We're always coming back for that moment. There is that moment, that flash happens all the time. Now, he says, when you relate, yes, when you relate to things or to the world, one of the first flashes that takes place is a feeling of duality or separateness, which is what I was talking about. From that first flash, you then begin to evaluate, to pick and choose, to involve yourself in decision making. You begin executing desire and will. So this, of course, is a description of how the ball gets rolling, that it is the activity of ego, and it is the birth and development of samsara. That experience of duality is something we can work with, though. It is not something to concentrate on or try to abolish, that we can work with it by seeing it. In the same way that we see our thoughts during meditation. He says mindfulness of effort is not a way of reforming yourself. It is starting with what you are. It is being what you are. That this practice is about being, not becoming. So it's just coming back to your immediate experience and being who you are. In mindfulness, he says, mindfulness of effort, you start with the experience of duality. So here it is. He's talking about working with this. So by becoming back to direct experience, you can begin to experience the duality. You can begin to see that experience of duality. And by doing that, you can bring that into your practice. You see, the fact is, we're here practicing, working with our mind, and this is part of our experience. That he says the instinct to practice arises because there is somebody to practice. The existence of self-consciousness is the basis of practice. I mean, if this wasn't happening, this kind of ordinary self-consciousness coming up again and again, what am I doing right now? There really wouldn't be practice. So the idea here is it's just another thing that happens. Through such awareness, it is possible to develop that is based on a particular plan or aim. Through such practice, it is possible to develop effort that is not based on a particular plan or aim, but on the simple unconditioned effort to be. Once again, to be, not to do, just to be. So now, the game of resistance. So, yes, there is resistance. He says, it seems that an unknown force is imposing its power on you. You don't want to get into the practice of meditation. I'm sure This is something we've all experienced, of course. And this is another experience that you can work with by being aware of it. Wow, I really don't feel like meditating. But that's resistance. Seeing it for what it is the key. That you can see this resistance and you can work with it. And you can make that part of your practice. You see, everything that arises, everything, feelings of resistance, of confusion, of all of it, can simply be recognized in the moment. I mean, he says here that some kind of resistance is going on, otherwise, there wouldn't be any journey. By relating with the resistor and the resistance, you've already begun the journey. So we can include the resistance in our practice. When everything is included in the practice, there are no enemies. There's nothing to struggle with. That it is all part of what's going on in this moment. Every time you come back, relax, bring your awareness to what actually is, it's all there. If you just acknowledge that such a thing as resistance exists, he says, there is no problem. Now, mistaken effort. He says there are many kinds of effort. One kind of effort is the effort to achieve something by struggling. Another kind of effort is based on dragging yourself along with an attitude of tremendous meaningfulness and seriousness. There is no upliftedness or inspiration in your work. You are simply being dutiful. I think it's easy to see that this is not the kind of effort that is particularly helpful, to say the least. Right effort, or right effort is another way of referring to mindfulness and effort. It's actually easier in a way. It is the effort to remind yourself to wake up, to come back to what is now, that returning to the awareness of your body, your breath, of the present moment. It is what we do in our practice. When we sit, meditate, realize we're thinking, come back, is what we do over and over again. But it's also important to note, I think, that it's important to keep it fresh. There might be a tendency to like just sort of sit there and, oh yeah, thinking, just sort of going through some kind of automatic motions here. But the idea here is that in every moment of awareness can be fresh, like starting over, you might say. So, the abstract watcher, sudden flash, he says, there is a way to bring your mind back, which we might call the abstract watcher. The abstract watcher does not have an aim or a goal. It is just mind being aware of itself. And this is one of those things that can be a little tricky to think, to really understand. But that first flash described in the beginning of the chapter, it has a self-referential or dualistic quality that I'm thinking, I just woke up. I'm bringing my attention back to the breath. But then there can be a flash of awareness of the presence of that neurotic watcher that is delivering that commentary. We can actually see that happening. And this can become another experience to bring to your practice. You see, there is that hitchhiker, that watcher that we've spoken of many times, that voice that as you go through life is, it's like if you ever watch a sports game on TV, it's like the commentary, you know, that is saying, am I doing this right? Am I doing, what about that? What do they think of me? How am I going to, all of that stuff. That is the neurotic watcher. But what he's talking about here, the abstract watcher, is a simple awareness that sees that happening. So he says, at that point, you don't think in terms of going back to the breath or trying to get away from thoughts. Instead, there is a general sense that something is happening here and you are suddenly brought back. You see? That it can work that way. That there can be some experience of that kind of duality, that kind of watcher, and just in seeing it, you're here. So, in mindfulness of effort, there is a sudden flash of the watcher's being there. This is the mindfulness of effort. And he says, mindfulness of effort cannot be manufactured. It comes along when there is discipline. Once you have the attitude of discipline, and there's something that reminds you that he has this, he says that, and what that is that flash of awareness, that something, you become aware of something in that moment. You know what it is without having to think about it, analyze it, identify it, that there is that instantaneous recognition. Elsewhere in the teachings, they speak of this as a kind of a communication, that things communicate themselves. So he says that those kinds of questions, that what is that, no longer apply. Just that. That there is a flash of awareness, and here we are. The awareness and the knowing that happen at the same time. They're simultaneously. Something happens, there's awareness, there's knowing, and this is like touch and go that we spoke of before, that happen at the same time. You come back, there's an awareness that you're coming back, and you're here. So there's no need to stick around and evaluate it. Right effort, he says, is instant effort. You can call this sudden kind of effort leap, jerk, or sudden reminder. It is unconditional because it comes to you and changes your whole course. This idea of a jerk or a leap is something you may or may not experience, but coming back from dreams can be a vivid experience. I think, especially in everyday life, if you're walking down the street with your usual preoccupations and something wakes you up, there can be an experience of suddenly becoming aware of everything that's going on. It can be very vivid and fresh. And that's my take on what he's talking about here with it being a sense of a leap or a jerk, that you can start to have a clear awareness of feeling of what it's like to be lost in thought, of that experience, and then being present. And that can be a very sharp change. So He says the idea is not to try to maintain that sudden instinct of mindfulness, to hold on to it or to cultivate it, but to get back to meditation. And this is something we've encountered in the past, but generally speaking, you don't try to hang on to it. That sudden flash or instantaneous, that sudden flash of effort or instantaneous reminding trick is universal to all practices of meditation, from Hinayana practices up to the highest level of Tantra. Therefore, he says, effort is the most important point in the practice of meditation. This effort here, right effort. And it also applies to post-meditation experience or meditation in action, he says. It applies to day-to-day living. And here he kind of puts things together in a way. How am I doing with time? Okay. Mindfulness of body, which is something covered just now, before this. So mindfulness of body creates the general setting, bringing meditation into the geography of your life. That's awareness that we bring to our body and to the physical experience. Mindfulness of life is about making personal relationship with the meditation practice. And then mindfulness of effort makes both the mindfulness of body and the mindfulness of life more vivid and workable. With mindfulness of effort, you are clearly on the path. Effort is the connection that makes things move forward and proceed. So I think that that's actually fairly evident that the other things can be, I don't know, can be considered as more as having to do with understanding, but effort is action. It's taking action. So, mindfulness of effort, the sudden reminder or sudden jerk of mindfulness is extremely important to our practice. And he says that sudden jerk of effort is not about improving your meditation, but about bringing it back to the ground, sitting on a cushion and breathing. So once again, it's all about that. It's all about one way or another, all through this practice, it's all about really one way or another coming back. Now, this is interesting. You cannot bring about mindfulness of effort just by hoping a flash will come to you and you will be reminded. You have to set up some kind of general alarm system, so to speak, or general atmosphere of effort. And this has to do with openness. That to the extent that we remain present here in this moment, that's the effort part, our mental chatter will subside and the feelings of needing to do something, anything, can recede, and that creates space, openness. And the greater our untainted awareness of what's going on, relating directly to whatever appears before us, that creates an openness, a space. And that is the kind of place where the kind of right effort we're speaking of here can start to occur. What can hold us back are any reservations we may have about the practice. those, any kind of reservations, questioning of it, that these reservations undermine our diligence, our willingness to stick with it. And he says, unless you give up reservations, it will be virtually impossible to develop instantaneous effort or to have it dawn on you. So it is extremely important to have respect, appreciation, and the willingness to work hard. Now, of course, I don't think anyone here is fully enlightened. So, to a certain extent, this is aspirational. But again, it's a place where having the better we can understand this, we can get an idea of what this is pointing to, then that facilitates our being able to actually experience it. So, and he says, you need to understand that the virtue you need to understand the virtue and importance of effort. Diligence is an extremely powerful thing. In terms of the flash, he says you have to develop some sense that you are completely possessed and haunted. And I think earlier we've spoken of being haunted by the Dharma, that by being engaged in the Dharma wholeheartedly, that it begins to haunt you. And so that's what he's speaking of here. I think I'm going to skip that little bit. And also he brings up an analogy, which are apparently two of the most common analogies for this, which is the analogy of the hunter and the person in love. And in both cases, this is about a person in love or a hunter is fixed completely and unflinchingly on the object of their awareness and are also fully open to it, and that happens naturally and without effort. And then finally, I think most of this last part here I can just read really. He says, that openness is the most important aspect of effort. Awareness happens afterwards. Within openness, there is an instant flash of effort, concentrated effort, and awareness follows. And then, having disowned that sudden experience, awareness occurs very slowly and brings things back to level. So, in other words, we can get, when there are these moments of open awareness, there can be certain dramatic flashes of experience. It's seductive to get hung up on it. Then they go back and try to seek it. So what he's speaking of here is that there can be an experience and that you disown it. If you're able to relate with the subtle mindfulness of effort, then you have no problem. And then finally he says, that is what I meant by disowning the experience. You do not entertain the messenger, and you do not have to find out where you came from. I love this. He says, instead, you can be like a snowflake released from the clouds, just about to come down onto the ground. You have no choice. You are going to land on the ground in any case. It feels very real. So, I'm going to pass this off to Philip now.
Thanks, Barry. Do you want to entertain questions at this point?
We could.
So if anyone has pressing questions on Barry's part, why don't we go ahead and attend to those now, and then I'll go ahead with my part. Or if you'd rather wait, that's fine.
Criticisms? Do you want to rate my performance?
That's done anonymously.
Thank you, Carolyn.
5-star, Barry.
I would like to say something.
Oh, shucks.
Okay.
Highly recommended.
So
Wow, this is a chapter I needed to hear. Oh,
Uh,
oh,
How so? What about it?
it's humbling to see how much time I've wasted over for 30 or 40 years to find out what I really should be doing. Oh, man.
but one of the major lessons here is that all of that is part of it. All of that is part of the path. All of that is part of your path.
You just bring that to awareness, just like your breath, that thought, and let it go. There are no thoughts that are true.
I'm happy to let go of that one.
That one was very critical.
Yep.
So don't be self-critical, including about that thought. Don't be self-critical about being critical, self-critical. That's what he's telling us. There's this one phrase that just knocked me out. I just want to read it. It's from the beginning under first flash duality. He says, in meditation, if meditation practice is just a way of transforming you into a better personality, you have already been alienated by the very idea of practice. So if you're trying to improve yourself in some way, then you've been alienated by the idea of practice. He says you feel you are not good enough, that you need to improve by practicing more and more. And then here's this thing, I think this deserves to be on the refrigerator. In contrast, mindfulness of effort is not a way of reforming yourself. It is starting with what you are. It is being what you are with exertion and discipline. You don't have to start by trying to be the best. You just do it. What you are. We're coming back to what we are. Letting go of any standards that we think we might have to live up to. That's the path of confusion and suffering.
So isn't that beautiful? Over and over through this, the message is, this is not a project, just be. The irony here, the chapter title is what? Mindfulness of effort. It's effortlessness. It's just being. And everything that happens is part of it.
I guess there might be a little bit of effort in coming back to your awareness of being. But if you make that into some kind of virtuous act, like I'm going to come back to awareness of being, then you're caught again in self-criticism and unhappiness.
And it's so gradual and natural and organic, bit by bit, little by little. It happens all by itself. So what Barry was talking about, the flash, you've all experienced that, right? You're sitting on your cushion, you're meditating, and then suddenly, you're like in South Africa. How did you get there? But then you're back, and you don't have to think all those thoughts. It just happens and you're back. And so you're sitting again. And like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Does Frederick have a...
Yes. And also, the right effort is letting go of the effort of neurosis that it brings in. That's something you can just let go of. It's like, whoa, I don't have to work so hard carrying this narrative.
It can be a great relief to let
Yes.
go of that stuff.
Wow.
So maybe we should continue.
Okay, so Chogyam Trungpa goes on talking about mindfulness of effort, and he talks about ordinary effort versus mindfulness of effort. He says, one of the problems with ordinary effort is that it becomes so dreary and stagnant. Ordinary effort is based on thinking. Duty is always verbalized. Ordinary effort is conditioned by thought. That makes things very boring and extremely unsuccessful in the long run. Full stop. It's just a chore, right? It never becomes fully integrated. It's just a chore that never becomes something you want to do. He goes on to say, meditation is a life's work. You have to apply mindfulness of effort constantly. If you rely on ordinary effort, your meditation practice just becomes stupid and confused. You wonder why on earth you started this in the first place. Does this make sense? What he's saying, what I'm saying? It just has to come from the heart, the same way your breathing comes from the center of your body. It's not something you impose from the outside, from some book you read. It's not something you say to yourself, I need to do this. It just becomes as natural as breathing. It becomes a life's work. It becomes a life. He says, mindfulness of effort will keep things completely balanced. Effort takes place in a fraction of a second without any name or idea attached to it, over and over, step by step. He says, the notion of patience comes in, the effort to maintain non-aggression. That's the definition of patience, maintaining non-aggression. The aggressiveness, brings up the attempt to develop productivity through sitting practice, goal orientation. The purpose of patience is to overcome such achievement orientation. This is not some kind of program you're imposing on yourself. It's much more organic than that. This is who you are, who we are. You should be simply mindful, purely mindful, with nothing further being implied. This is not a project. Just be. Then he goes on to a section called Continuity of Effort. And he talks about virya, which is working hard. Being hardworking is based on developing the prajna of virya. It is based on developing appreciation or joy in the practice. And that happens naturally. It's so beautifully organic. That just blossoms and grows on its own. It is based on developing appreciation or joy in the practice. Such effort becomes self-existing. It stands on its own 2 feet. This effort he's talking about a moment ago, ordinary effort, it just falls down. It just collapses. You've got to be there constantly propping it up. Exertion, or virya, is the unceasing interest in sitting practice and in awareness practice in general. Exertion is non-discriminating. You just push everything into that area and you go along with it. Like what Judy was saying, it's like driving on a wet highway. You just keep driving. It is a question of continuity. Steadiness is very much necessary. He says, the point is that mindfulness practice requires a lot of work, a lot of energy, effort, and surrendering. You regard the whole thing as an ongoing journey, which has already begun. Exertion has to be a constantly ongoing process. You just keep going. Then he talks a little bit in a section he's titled, Not Looking for Entertainment. He says, effort means that you are not looking for entertainment. You feel completely secure and grounded with your own boredom. So what is that about? Sometimes those words can be off-putting. It's like you're not seeking escape in all of these addictions we normally fritter away our lives on. Effort means you're not looking for entertainment because you're able to appreciate the world you live in. You feel completely secure and grounded with your own boredom. Your own boredom here meaning, not movies or not Johnny Walker Red or whatever your addiction of choice is. They're all things that are sort of designed to put us to sleep, right? What we're doing here is waking up. This is particularly he says, this is particularly workable if you have developed a regular daily, weekly, or monthly practice. And that applies to everything that's been said so far. That's how it becomes organic and natural. And that's how it becomes effortless. It just becomes the way that you live. This is particularly workable if you have developed a regular daily, weekly, or monthly practice. There's a shift that occurs from meditation becoming a chore to meditation becoming something you miss profoundly if you fail to do it. You don't really notice when that shift happens, but trust me, that shift occurs, that shift happens, that all by itself. In developing a regular physical routine, you can bring about a psychological change. You experience a glimpse of awareness coming to you. More and more, longer and longer, more and more often, deeper and deeper. It really is self-perpetuating. He says, the problem with entertainment is that you become addicted to the next entertainment. So you become unable to face whatever pain or suffering comes up. This is real life, after all, right? That is what is traditionally known as bad karmic creation. Any practice without effort, any practice based on impatience, leads to the creation of further karmic imprisonment. So I think he's talking about escapism here. And you'll never get anywhere going down that road. Sooner or later, life is going to be there right in front of you, right? And you want to be awake to meet it. But it's all part of it. It's all part of it. He goes on to say, meditation does not have to be painful or pleasurable. It could be either. Any struggles involved, any problems, they're all part of meditation, sitting meditation. Then he begins to talk about humor. There's a need for humor about practice. If you are taking everything too seriously, then it becomes something entirely other than the path. Rather than eliminating karma, you are producing karma. And he comes back to meditation is a discipline. Meditation is a discipline. You do not have to be subtle or delicate about it. You sit and breathe. Over and over throughout all of his books, it comes down to two words, just sit, just sit. And everything else will happen from that. You sit and breathe. He finishes by saying, effort is all pervasive throughout the four foundations of mindfulness. Although the four foundations indicate levels of practice, in terms of the technique, there is no change at all, none whatsoever. The mindfulness of body introduces you to what actually happens in your experience of body and breathing. The foundations of life, effort, and mind introduce more and more large thinking. So studying the four foundations is a way to create a total picture of mindfulness. It just blossoms. So that brings us to the end of this chapter, and I'd be happy to, along with John and Barry, do my best to answer any questions.
Don't all speak at once.
I
What?
don't have a question as much as I just want to say how the message that I have been receiving through the daily practices with the Sangha group have given me that. They've first of all taken away the self-flagellation about I can't do this right. And I show up and I'm so, I show up and I'm so pleased. I have never been so pleased to sit in meditation as I am. It's like, home. I'm getting a frisson. It's a refuge. So what you're saying is happening for me, and I want to thank you all for that. It's so rich.
That's great. That's
That
what
is great.
Personally,
That expression is used, coming home. It's like coming home.
amazing.
Not what I was expecting, as a former teacher used to refer to me as her non-meditator,
Oy, oy, oy.
because I should just try harder. And, you know,
Terrible.
she did good things. She did good things, and she kept me on my feet when probably I wouldn't have lasted. But the meditation thing was so, but she put the meditation in my body somehow. Like, it was the meditation I did was far better than nothing, because
Yes.
it opened me up for what I'm finding with you people.
Exactly. You're here now.
It's if it's in the path, it's on the path.
Okay.
Well,
Fred has his hand up.
Frederick.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but just a comment on, or maybe it is a question. It's, how could this be basic teaching? He's combining like the foundations of 3 paramitas in one thing. He's like, oh yeah, you're just going to do disciplines, patience, and exertion, but at a basic level.
I've got to tell you, years ago, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, probably the greatest teacher at his time, before he died, he gave a talk in Halifax in which he said that Trungpa Rinpoche was teaching the backwards path of Ati. Ati is Dzogchen, the great perfection. It's the ultimate level of the path in the Nyingma scheme. It's very, very advanced. And what Khyentse Rinpoche was saying is that Trungpa Rinpoche taught the most beginning doctrines from the point of view of Ati. That's why this is so amazingly profound. I've been studying Dzogchen for the last 20 years. There are 2 main practices in Dzogchen. One is called cutting through to original purity, and the other is called leaping over. They've alternated over the centuries, which is more important. Right now, cutting through is foundational. And what cutting through is exactly what he's describing here. We're cutting through self-doubt. We're cutting through self-criticism. We're cutting through good and bad. To what? To what's already here. This is a gorgeous description and explanation of Trekchen, of cutting through.
Yeah, and I also forgot he combined another paramita in there, meditation. So there's actually 4 paramitas in one in here.
What paramitas in here?
Well, there are so many parts of these teachings that interrelate in those ways. That's terrific to make those connections. Because he doesn't say paramita in here.
Here's the one I want to put on my refrigerator. It says, it's from the early part of the chapter. In contrast, mindfulness of effort is not a way of reforming yourself. It is starting with what you are. Starting with what you are. It is being what you are. So beautiful.
What page is that, John?
Sorry, what?
What page is that on?
I don't know. I'm reading from my notes. Let me see.
Oh,
Oh, I could find it.
It's in the section first flash : duality.
It's right at the
okay.
beginning.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is quite a chapter. This one was a humdinger.
Oh, boy.
So beautiful. God, if we, all of us friends, we can do this together. We'll be this together. Wow. What a prospect. Sharing in the world, sharing our lives.
Well, we're almost out of time. Does
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
anybody have a thought, a question?
Well, we're not out of time because we usually go to 7.
No. No? Yes? Oh,
Yeah.
you're right. Never mind. Time doesn't exist.
I got a question about the resistance that like the resistance to be what we are, that I find is to be like the most profound resistance for some reason. Right. Where like the real suffering is.
I agree. I think so. We want to make ourselves better. That's the real bugbear. Evil.
Yeah, he says resistance is easily undone if you just see it, but I haven't found that to be necessarily true for myself, actually. I mean, that's what they say. The most difficult part of this practice, and John has said this many times, the most difficult thing is doing it. Is getting your butt on the cushion and doing it.
Yeah, he used to say to us, just do it.
Hi guys.
Hey, turn that off.
All right.
Just do it, it works, he says. Over and over again. The fact that we're meditating regularly is terrific. It's probably the most important thing we're doing, is relaxing into this regular meditation. Don't you think, Philip? And Eric?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think about that every day. Meditating regularly and meditating as a group is so profoundly important.
Oh, yeah.
It's taken me 50 years to get to this place.
I was not meditating on this regular basis before John said, we have this online meditation. This is before you moved to Colorado, actually, when you first started this Zoom.
Wonderful.
But yeah, this is such a
Very grateful for this.
gift.
Me too.
Mm.
Great for all of you.
Yeah.
It's true.
Wow.
I think Jerry and Philip would agree. I'm just grateful for the community because it locks us in to this path,
Yeah.
which is unfolding
Yeah.
unstoppably,
Mm.
just by us relaxing.
But I found this effort of, or mindfulness of effort, to be really interesting because, it's
Yeah.
actually some very fine points being made there, the differentiating like dualistic or self-referential effort from, what he calls natural effort. It's really interesting stuff, I gotta say.
It's very subtle, but very, very important.
Enjoyable, did you say?
Very important. The subtle differences, and you can see how in your mind you smear them together, and when they're picked apart, it's very different. When it's picked apart the way he picks them apart, it's with no blame. He's so encouraging. So encouraging.
So, indeed.
Yeah. And I love this idea of you can bring whatever happens into your practice.
Yeah.
And that if you bring everything into your practice, then there are no enemies. Right? It's all grist for the mill, you might say.
Yeah.
He makes that point about resistance. On the bottom of 306, he says,
Yeah.
the breath and resistance are similar in that the breath is an alternating experience that comes and goes, and resistance is also a sort of pulsation. The impulse to resist comes in spells.
Yeah.
And all of that can be used. He goes on to say that the breath isn't dependably helpful. Sometimes the breath acts as a way of distracting your attention, but it all works. Sometimes resistance helps. Sometimes the breath doesn't. Sometimes the breath helps. Sometimes resistance doesn't.
Wow.
It's all part of your being. It's all part of being.
Wow. It's so different than what I now see is very judgmental, like, oh, you're thinking you've fallen off the track.
Are you being critical of that?
Yeah.
It's like there's no end to it. You can be critical of being critical.
Yeah. Why not?
Just bring it to awareness.
And it's just like with effort, we can work so hard at relaxing.
Yeah.
I can see it in people's faces sometimes. They're trying to relax. And they're just,
the term, there's a term vidya, which means seeing. In Tibetan, it's rikpa, means the same thing. And it's pure, simple, effortless seeing. And they talk about it being self-seeing, self-seen. In other words, you're not looking at yourself. What it means is that it's automatic. It's called run rik. Run is self, and rik is short for rikpa. That this vision that he's talking about so in such ordinary, wonderful language, it's run rik, which is at the height of the path. It's this ability to just be present, know you're present, with no effort. Because we are present with no effort. We're awake here. Effort just obscures it.
The problem is that it's too simple to be easy.
He said that too.
We can't, it's too simple for the Western mind. Really.
You
Isn't
said,
that something you have to do?
it's so simple. That's why nobody gets it. That's a feeling.
Right. Oy vey.
Oy vey. There you go.
People say that. They say it's so close, you can't see it. It's like it's on the tip of your nose. It's right here.
Yeah. Too simple to be easy.
It's on the tip of your. That's interesting.
That's right, the tip of your nose.
One of the main figures in the Nyingma lineage is a man named Vimalamitra. He was one of the two people actually, who brought Dzogchen to Tibet. And I've got a picture of him here on my shrine. He sits and he's got the letter Ah, which is sort of a symbol for Dzogchen Ati, for everything we're talking about here. Right on the tip of his nose. He's got it right here.
Tattoo? Is it a tattoo?
No. It's just an imaginary thing. You know, they draw a picture and they put this little the letter
Oh.
which is the last letter or the first letter, I forget which, in the Tibetan alphabet.
Oh, crazy man.
So we should. If we could think of ways in which we could help the world together as a group, some project, would be very synchronous in this. We can be of benefit, we can be bodhisattvas and practice just what he's teaching us.
Oh, but wait a minute. This is the Hinayana.
Yeah, right. I mean, listen to me. I've been studying this stuff for 50 years, 53 years, I think, with him, starting with him. It's like, it's new every time. It just goes deeper every time you study it.
I
And
was watching, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was watching some films on Vipassana in prisons, and that was incredible. I've been thinking so much about how prisons need meditation, and it was even more than I thought. It was amazing how much it helped everyone.
Where were you seeing this?
Some films, I can put it in the
Is it Trungpa Rinpoche or somebody else who's talking?
somebody else.
Was this something about Vipassana and being in
Yes.
prison or something?
Yes.
Yeah, I heard that title. I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's just amazing. They just how grounded they got, and they're not, a lot of them are never going to get out of prison, but they got hope and they got compassion and they were so calm. It was incredible. I'll put a link to the film.
Yeah, please
Oh,
do.
good. Yeah, please.
Rinpoche had a student whose name is Fleet Mole. And Fleet was involved with some others of Rinpoche students in running drugs. They had a boat and they were running them up and down the East Coast, and they got caught. And the other ones, I know who they are, sacrificed Fleet. They made him the scapegoat. And Fleet went to jail for 18 years. During that time in jail, he taught the Dharma. He's out now, and he is one of the senior teachers in the Shambhala Buddhist Sangha, still teaching.
Where?
Somewhere up in Halifax and around, I don't know, I just see his name once in a while. I haven't really followed him.
I think he and some others have an online, I don't know if it's a few days or a week. And I can't remember if he's dealing with resiliency or what it is, but I know he's offering something with some other teachers now. If you just Google his name, it'll come up.
Fleet, like the ships, a group of ships, Fleet, Mall, Maull, I think. It might be double L. And so what happened was that when that was very sort of au courant for a while, and a bunch of us started going into the prisons, including me, to teach Buddhism and meditation. First thing that hit me, I went into a prison down here in Colorado Springs. First, these guys show up for this Buddhist meditation class. They're all wearing prison jumpsuits. And when they open their mouths, they sound like you and me. But they're wearing prison jumpsuits and they're not walking out when I walk out. It was really shocking for me. There are a bunch of people who've done a fair amount of work in the prisons, in addition to Fleet. Yeah, they seemed like you and me, and ordinary, and here they are, trapped in this concrete environment.
They are us. They're my brothers.
Why are they your brothers?
I've had two of my brothers spend a lot of time in prison.
Oh,
Good.
I see. You didn't mean it.
And I always thought something like this would, and there's this woman, she was a death investigator or something like that, but her name's Renee Dinfield, and she's a really good writer. And she wrote a book called The Enchanted, and it's set on death row. And it's like so beautiful. But she takes you to this place that's like so blank and without hope, but then she finds beauty in it. And I don't know. So when I saw this stuff with the Vipassana too, I was just amazed. So, but she's somebody to check out her books.
Enchanted.
What's her name again?
Renee Dinfield. I'll write that down.
Yeah, The Enchanted.
Shinji, do you have anything to share?
No particular thoughts, but just resonating that I remember vaguely when I first read this chapter, and disclaimer, I didn't reread it. I just joined a class today. My understanding has been very different. And when I hear today, it's really just reminding myself how much the wrong kind of effort I'm still applying to my practice, and how much it has been unnecessary. And I think maybe one thing that came to my mind is that like effort is a kind of joyful effort. It's not like, oh, I gotta do this because I'm a Buddhist, because I need to, like it's not that kind of effort. It's more that you're inspired and you want to come back to what is a reality, is what is saying. I think that's more the point of it. And so that's just what I would share.
Thank you. Jill? Miriam? Oh, I just. Maybe next. Miriam.
Brett has his hand up.
Yes, Miriam. Looks like she's about to say. No.
Oh, Miriam, go ahead. You haven't said anything.
No, I just tonight with this chapter, I had gone through the course earlier on YouTube, and this time what stood out for me was the abstract watcher, and I think that's a really interesting way of framing it, because later in the Vajrayana we talk about open awareness, to a much larger extent, and it's very subtle, this being aware without commenting on that process, and it happens in flashes. And I like the fact that it's easier to recognize now, and to cherish it. It's encouraging to see the small steps and the very gradual process of it all, and it just makes me ease into it more. you know, approaching it in a more friendly way. Yeah, it's like opening up to life. What is there? Curious and open. Yeah. So that's all I have to say.
And we're back to this. We all know right now that we're here. I'm here in my room, looking at the screen. I know this, you know, with all of you on the screen. We all know that. It's effortless, undeniable. It's here. That's the abstract watcher. The fact that we acknowledge that doesn't need to be acknowledged, but it could be. We're here.
I want to add a part to that, and particularly relating to what Judith was saying, and you too, Shenye, that we're here because of where we were. There's nothing is wasted. It's all part of it.
Nothing is wasted.
Fred again.
With the resistance and mistaken effort, you know, there's a lot to play with here where I think in spiritual materialism, they have a story of in the chapter on sense of humor, where there was a guy about to die. And as he's dying, he's like, oh, meditate on Buddha Amitabha. And he thought Buddha Amitabha was gray. And he's like, no, it's red. And he burst into laughter as he was dying and had a huge smile on his face. And that makes me think of meditation and this resistance all the time. You know, there's so much there, even like doing like the wrong effort, you know, like, oh, wow, I'm being way too serious about my meditation. And you know, Chin Yu is saying, you know, the natural effort has some joy, and I think also some humor. You know, that seems to be the natural byproduct of the correct effort here, and which is joy, right? Maybe we got another paramita hidden in here, or no, sorry, generosity. Excuse me, with ourselves.
Do you know Julie Kay?
Sorry. Say that again.
No, someone's waiting in the waiting room, and so I'm going to take a look at our list. Of course, maybe we want to let him Zoom bomber in, you know, could be part of our practice. Julie.
No, she's not on the list.
She's not.
She might have her time zone confused.
Yeah, I don't know.
Send a message to waiting room, maybe.
I can do that.
Okay, thanks.
What the heck?
I just wanted to comment. Thank you so much, Philip and Barry. What I'm noticing is how my practice is changing. So everything changes. And I get very hard on myself. I have to watch that. And I'm sensitive if I think I'm being challenged by somebody else. The judgment of myself is much worse than any judgment from outside. So to have generosity to myself, if I keep coming back to that, I'm not doing this to attain some goal. And I heard recently from a teacher that Western culture is a huge handicap. us Westerners were like driven. Great American dream we must achieve, get from here to here. When I can't see that, I have to question myself.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot too. His Holiness the Dalai Lama talks about how stunned he was to learn the extent to which Westerners disliked and hated themselves.
Yeah,
It's not like this in Tibet.
no.
Let-
Capitalism.
Yeah.
Remember
The great American dream.
he said that America was really, really ready for the Dharma. That because we've achieved a height of neurosis and we have the spare time to practice the Dharma. Then he contrasted that to Tibetans who are living a peasant culture, with cattle and yaks and growing vegetables as best they can at altitude. And he said there is these peasants have a naive form of sanity because the exigencies of their lives, the difficulties, keep them saner. And we've got so much time, we can really get crazy, but they can't. But it's a naive form of sanity. He said Americans are better positioned to tread the path because of our suffering, our neuroticism, and the fact that we've got a material culture that supports us.
I can see that.
Here's another person that we haven't seen before, Meditation K.
Media Twink.
Oh,
I think we can safely ignore that one.
okay. Well, now we're getting close.
Well,
Wonderful class.
I think we've all had a lesson in great perfection, Dzogchen, Ati, with this chapter.
Mm.
It's really, he's describing Trekchen, it's called cutting through. And what's it cutting through to? The full phrase is cutting through to original purity, this world. Absent our ambitions, absent good and bad, it's originally pure. And so are we.
well, what do you say? Should we wrap up this party?
Okay, who's leading the chants?
I'm taking the dogs out.
We're gonna take the dog out. Shini,
See you later, darling.
Bye.
Bye, darling.
Shini, can you lead the chants?
Sure.
Okay, here we go.
We'll close by saying a prayer for peace and in dedicating the merit for our class and practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. By the blessings of enlightened and compassionate ones, by the power of my positive actions of 3 times and my prayers of pure aspiration, may wars, conflicts, epidemics, and all other maladies soften this world, and may the earth and all who live on this earth enjoy the abundance of well-being. May all learn to live lovingly with each other. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May he defeat enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Well, thank you all so much. It's wonderful to study and meditate with you.
Austin,
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Blessing.
Thank you.